Hey guys, welcome back to my another video. In this video, I'm going to show you that how we can use infinite scroll in Angular using the intersection observer. So the intersection observer API is in JavaScript itself, and basically on intersection observables here, as you guys can read, it will help to do a leading loading of the images. It will help for the implementing the infinite scrolling and also for visibility of ads. So basically, when we see any of the content, then we could able to see, actually we can able to trigger the API on that moment. Let's assume I am scrolling down here, and if I reach up to this point, then I could able to trigger a event on this point. So basically, when the user will see the content, then we can trigger the event on that point. Okay. So basically in intersection observers, we have a callback here. First thing we can put it, and another thing is the option here. And this is standard JavaScript, which is been built in. And in the option, we can put out three options here, such as root margin, and threshold. So root is basically which part you want to do a scroll. If you can do a null, if you want to scroll in whole page, and root margin is how much difference, how much of the margin you want to give on the root, and threshold is how much percentage. If you see the content, then you want to trigger the event. Here you can say for 50% mark, we can do for 0.5, and for 100% we can do 1. Okay, it says the value of 1 means the threshold is not considered passed until the every pixel is visible. Okay, so that means if if we put 1, then the all the content must see, then we can be able to trigger. So this is the what we're gonna use in our Angular. So let's begin. So this is my app currently here. I'm in this project here, but if I go in airlines, I don't have anything. So I'm gonna go back, jump to the code, and I'm gonna show it to you here what's really going on. So basically, I have a two link here, and each of this component that belongs. We don't have to worry about the project. We just need to worry about this the airlines. Okay. So in airlines here, which I don't have anything at this moment, I have only the blank component here, and HTML is also completely blank, which you guys can see here. But I have already created a service for airlines here, and this is the API which I'm using. This is a free API that we could use it and to test it our API. So I'm using this the free API here. So if I go for this API, let me search this in Google itself. Here, the fake REST API, and this is the airlines API it will provide, and this is what I use, and it also provides some paginations here, such as if you want to go for a page 0 on size 10, then you can use this API, which I exactly put it here. The size is 10 and pages is here. And this is the API which I put it here, and I also put a little bit of delay so we can see that data is coming from the API. I mean, it's going to come really fast, but it's better. I just put it a delay. I can remove this and as well. So this is my service here. And if I go for airlines now, let's build the airlines component here, right here. Okay. So the first thing what I'm gonna do is I'm going to write the constructor here, of course. And in the constructor, let me call that service called airline service, right? Let me give AL service, which is going to be our airline service. So airline service right here. Okay. So let's implement the ng on init as well. Ng on init. Sorry, on init on init, and here ng on init. Okay. So now the first thing, let me get this data and see first in a console log here. So get airlines. Actually, it give you a passenger data, but I'll put airlines, it's fine. So let me on ng on init call this guy, and here let me call this API. Okay, subscribe, and let me put this data here for now. Okay, and I need to provide the page. So I just say that 0. So now it's going to call the airlines uh, API. So I'll just put this as here AL So basically AL is going to be my subscription because it's going to trigger the API here. So now if I view the console here, I can see the data, which is a 10 data because I'm heading to the first one. If I go in network tab here, and if I refresh, then I will see the passenger and it's calling the page 0, size 10, and I'm getting a data. So now let's print this data on the screen here. So to print this data on the screen, I will grab the HTML from project because I want to print exactly like that, so I don't have to spend that much time on the HTML and CSS. Uh, okay, so I don't need this search value. I just need this here. So now I have a data here already printing. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a variable here, and I'll just give this any airlines. And here I will put this the data, which is I'm coming getting from the API, and I'm getting using a d.data because the in the console it will give in the data in a data field here. So in airlines, I will just put it uh, ng4. I'm looping the airlines, and I don't want this, and I don't want. I'm going to explain what I did it here, but I'm going to remove this first. Okay. So basically, it's looping the airlines, and I don't want this. And yep, and in airlines, it's just showing the data here. So now let's see how it looks like. Okay, here it is, the data. Of course, it's not matching with the property because the property is the first thing what we got is on airlines. We got I use a P here for airline. If we use A as a airlines, doesn't matter. A, A. So here is the image which the airlines provide, which is here a logo. So what I'm going to do is A dot airline dot logo. Okay, so this would be our logo here, and this is the passenger name, and here I provide the name as for passenger, and for the okay, so we have passenger here, and let me give the name of the airlines, what airlines the passenger is traveling. So I'll just put the airline dot the name. So now let's see how it looks like here. So basically I'm just putting the data in a screen on HTML here. So here it is, the Thai Airlines, and okay, looks like the order is not printing. The reason why is, let me see. Okay, okay, now if let me check if there any error. Yep, there is an error for last name. Wait, oh, this guy. Yep, there's no last name here. So now let me see how it show up. Okay, okay, looks good here. It's show up the logo. It show up the passenger name. This is going to be airlines. Airline. So it is airline and passenger and data. Okay. So now we have a 10. Okay, so make this. So now we have a 10 data here, but we want to do as a infinite scroll here. So now let's do an infinite scroll. So how we're going to do? As I mentioned before, we're going to use the intersection observer. Okay. So now here what we get is we get a data on this guy, but this API is also providing more than data. If I check here in the console, then it's also providing the total pages. What is total pages we have for this API? So I'm going to do now is I'm going to store the total page on this variable, total pages on this variable. Okay, This is going to be a number. So I'll just do 12 pages here. So now let me put that 12 pages here to d dot 12 pages. Is, is that? Yep, d dot 12 pages. So now I have 12 pages here. And I'm going to also create another variable called current page, which currently I am in. So the default current page is 0, so I'll just put here. So now instead of giving here the page as 0, so I'll just provide here the current page to 0. Okay. So now it's going to call exactly the same. Nothing will happen, but it's going to store the data. Why is the data is loading pretty slow here? The reason why is I put delay here, right? If I put 0 delay, then data is going to load so fast, right? It's very fast. Okay. So now let me go here and then let me write that the intersection observer. Uh, the first thing what we need to do is for the intersection observer, we need to provide the root here, which is with the root, which is going to be our whole screen, right? Which is okay. But in intersection in this observer right here in the observer, we can bind this observer to our native element. On our native element, we could able to bind this observer, and we need to tell that which part of the content, if it's C, then we want to do a scroll. So, so the logic is going to be when this list is going all the way in the bottom. If this the last one sees as like 50%, then we want to do a scroll here. If we have the more pages available, right? If we have more pages available, and of course on this one we have a lot of pages, we have like 830 pages, but we need to make sure that we didn't cross the 830. Okay, but if we see the last content here as a 50%, if the user do up to here like 50% right here, then we want to trigger on this time, not the scroll event. We just want to make sure that this the last content is like 50%, then we want to trigger the event. So how are we going to do that? Okay, so the first thing is, let me create. We need to make sure that what is the last of the content. But right now we're looping here this guy, and we don't know what is the last content at all. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy this. I'm going to paste it here. So what it really does now, it will give me a twice. Okay, but we only want the last content here. Okay, so now let's see how we're going to achieve the last content here. Pretty straightforward because we know that what is the index number here. And if we know the index number, we can do here ng if. Okay, so if ng if, right, we can say that if this is I is equal to, right, airlines, which is going to be our array, and airlines has a length. Okay, okay, if it's the last one, then we want to show this. So what happened now, it's showing only one data, but in last one it's showing only one data, but we need to make sure that the last one is also need to show only one time. So basically, yep, we need to add one here. Forgot about that. Yep, because this is starting at 0, of course, and we need to add one. So now, as you guys can see, the last one is printing twice because this content is basically this element here, and the bottom one is this element. So we just want to show this one. Okay, we just want to show this one. I mean, there could be a multiple ways to do this to achieve this using this intersection observable, but I use this way for now. I mean, if there is any other way, please let me know. I'm going to use this way. So now what I'm going to do is here basically just going to check if I'm just going to check here for the another one if this is not equal to the last one. If if the content is the last one, then use this one, not this one. Otherwise, use this content. Okay, so now we can see only one. So now we know that this is our last content right here. So on this last content, what I'm going to do is I'm going to add the template variable. Okay, so the name of the template variable, which I'm going to give here, is the last list. Okay, so this is the last list. So what we can do now is we can use the last list on our uh, here in the component. Okay, so what we're gonna do is we're gonna use something called view child children, and in the view children we'll just specify this is our last list, and we will give as a read here as element ref. Okay, so now we can access that element. So basically this is going to be our last list. Okay, and this is going to be in a query list, and in a query list I'm going to use a element ref here. Okay, this is element ref of the query list, and that's the last list, and this last list is basically is going to be this guy. How we know? Let's print it out. How? But make sure that we need to print on after view init. Okay, so after ng after view init, we need to make sure that when the view content is load, then we could able to use this the last list. So if print it here, and if I go in content here, then we can see the query list. This is the last list that is printing here. Okay, everything looks good. So now, so now we know that last content is there. So now we need to use that last content to the intersection observer. So for that intersection observer, let me create the one function here called intersection observer. So on intersection observer, as you guys know, as I showed you before, we need an option to provide it here. So what I'm going to do is I can literally type this one or copy this and paste it here. Okay. And for this root, we're going to use as the whole window, everything. So I'll put as null. A root margin, we don't want it. And for the threshold, we want to give, if somebody see our content as 50%, then we're going to trigger it. So what we're going to trigger here is basically we're going to trigger here in a callback. So in a callback, basically, it will give us the entries here, something called entries. Okay. So in the entries, we can check if the entries is basically is going to be the array, and if is intersecting, that means if somebody went through it here, then we want to do something here, right? Here we want to scroll more, right? We want to scroll more. Okay, now we need to use the intersection observer in our the last content which we have right here. So when the component will load, this guy will trigger, which is great. And we want another one is to check the intersection observer as well. Use this as well. Okay, use this guy. But this guy is use printing it, but this observer is not binding with anything. So we need to bind this intersection observer to our last content. So how are we gonna bind it? Create a new observer here. Okay, and use this observer on our here. The first thing is here. So now we have the instance of that observer, which is here on this guy. So now when this the last content right here, ng on after view init right here, whenever this guy is changed or whenever this guy is ready to go, then we want to bind it right here, this observer. Okay, so how are we going to do that? So this is a query list of element ref. So what we're gonna do is here we're gonna put the changes. I mean, it's gonna give you a changes functions which we can able to subscribe. So whenever this guy changes after the view init, it will then on that time we need to make sure that it will provide something called d.last, which is a last of content of this list, because we use the virtual rent, and in this guy we have a lot of stuff here, but for the last content what we're gonna do is we're gonna bind our observer, which is basically going to be intersection observer here, and the observer has a function called observe, right? In observe we want our last element, native element, to be bind. So I just want to show you that what is this the last is. If I do a console log here, and if I go in here, so this is the function, and the last element right here is going to give me this guy native element right here. So this is the native element which I'm going to bind the intersection observer, which is this guy, right? So now this guy is already has the intersection observer, which is the last content is on all the way in the bottom what we have, and this guy has the intersection observer already binding on it. So now let's scroll all the way down and slowly go to the last one and just show like 50% right here. I didn't went all the way bottom, but we just see like 50% and we see the scroll more, and that's it, right? So now we know that our intersection observer is working. So now here we just need to write our logic, right? So what's the logic is going to be? The logic is going to be if our this the current page, which is our the current page, which is going to be 0, is less than the total page. Of course, we have a lot of total pages here. If we have this low, then we need to increase our current page by 1, which is going to be 0 plus 1 is 1. And we want to use, we're going to call the here this function. So basically it's going to call this function again, right? And here of course it's going to, what it really does is it will override it. So if I scroll down, right, if I let me see here, if I scroll here, okay, so now we have a Thai airways all the way on top. So if I scroll here, then it's already overriding. We have a Thai here, but it changes to EVA, right? So basically, whenever I go down, it just override it. It will not add it up. We need to add it up, right? To add it up, now let's write the small logic. So before I write the small logic, I have something called the spinner, which is basically I'm using the NGX spinner to using as a loader bar. So whenever this guy is loading, then we could use this spinner dot show, and whenever the data is loading is complete, then we're going to use inner dot is height. Okay, this is just for loader bar. So now let's get back to our the logic here. So now what it really does is it just override it. It just override the airlines, but we want to add it up. This d dot data is going to be the list, so we can use a for each here. So each of the element that is providing by that guy here. So here in airlines, we can use this as array. And on this airlines, when the data is loaded, then we can push to that airlines this element. Okay. So instead of using this airlines here, I'm just pushing the data. So whenever it's loading this airlines, then it will just add it up the more data. Okay. So this is the logic what we're going to use it here. So now I'll just save it. So now let's see what happened. So now I'm loading the page 0. I'm going to network tab as well. So if I refresh this, my page is 0. So now if I scroll down and if I go for the last one and just show as a 50%, now it's adding up. So now another API is calling here, page 1, size 10. So now it just add up. It just add up to the our own one. So if I go scroll down, it add up. So it's keep adding on it until the current page is not complete, which is 800 something page. So if I go all the way top, then we have a Thai Airways. And of course, if I go all the way down, now it will do infinite scroll here, guys, using the intersection observer. Okay. So the another thing is now let me do a little bit delay here. So see how the loading bar works. So if I do delay here, now loading is showing up. So now I have a 10 list here. So if I go all the way down and now it's loading bar again, now it will add up more here, right? All the way down. Now here is a D something. Now if I go in now, it will add up Emirates, everything here. So if I go here, now it will add up. So this is how the intersection observer can work in Angular. And I'm gonna put this code in the GitHub, and please let me know guys if you have any questions, and I hope you guys learned something new, and thank you very much for watching. Bye for now.